With the first ever 12-team college football playoff set to kick off Friday night, the entire college football world and the entire landscape of the country will have its eyes on South Bend, Indiana for a moment. There will be several group of people whose eyes will lay upon the city of Columbus, wondering if a certain group of volunteers will be able to walk their way out of Columbus and on to the Rose Bowl, face off the number one opponent. But to get there, they must pull the upset of immense proportions that could not only change the landscaping of the coaching carousel, but also the landscape of the national championship. Want to find out which team this is and how their path to the national championship and what their path to the national championship would be? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you so much for hanging out with us again on another edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. You gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo here. And don't have anything to throw out there from my man Brad. At least not yet. He hasn't caught wind of the latest show that I have put out there. So, needless to say, it will come in due time. But I hope you guys are doing great. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful weekend. I surely did. Was just very busy, but that goes with the territory, as you all know, when you're enjoying such great pigskin and getting ready for some great pigskin all around. You know, normally we start with a little housekeeping. And of course, my man Brad did say something on the show about Travis Hunter is the favorite, but why? Thanks for the compliment, bro. I like these shades. I just got them. Ashton. Hey, absolutely. It is a sad day. Yeah, I try. There's a lot of people that feel the same way Brad does. He's saying, preach on. And yeah, I mean, Ashton Jeanty should have won the Heisman. There's a lot of people trying to fight and say it was basically, in a nutshell, a popularity contest. And it really was. And hey, look, my jokes are funny.
What?
Hey, my jokes are funny.
It's official. You suck.
The real tragedy is here. You have a really good elite athlete that is going to get shysted because Dion talked him up. And I'm just not a big fan of it. It needs to stay out. Dion needs to stay out of this, and the reality of it is he's gonna trick the NFL into taking a kid that's probably going to be not an elite player. I think a lot of people are not gonna like what I'm saying, but I don't think he's an elite player. Not sold on him at all. On either side of the ball. But let's move on to the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, I need many of you to understand that this show is about how the Volunteers can have the perfect path to the national championship. No more, no less. I need all of you to understand that. This does not mean I'm predicting this. This would be the perfect scenario for the Tennessee Volunteers to win a national championship. I've gotten people hitting me up in my inbox asking me, saying in my dreams, even with the Indiana, in my dreams. The reality of it is, it could happen. I'm not saying it is. I'm just putting it out there for every fan out there that has a program that they're rooting for. Everybody's got a program that they're rooting for. So let's kind of keep the keep dreaming aspect of it on low, because the reality of it is, everybody that's got a team in this thing has an opportunity to win it all. With that being said, let us meet the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, as many of you may or may not know, the Tennessee Volunteers were one of the most prolific offenses in the entire country, racking up yards after yards and after yards after yards. They started the season against Chattanooga 69-3. They totaled two victories, NC State 51-10, Kent State 71-0. And after that, they proceeded to dial it down since they were playing some pretty good competition. And hiding in the wings was a guy by the name of Sampson. And while Iamaleave had the world taken by storm just with his name alone, Sampson was the guy that was doing the bulk of the work in majority of these games. In a surprising take, he had 1,485 yards and 22 touchdowns. Now, if any of you are surprised at this, the reason most people are surprised at it is because you heard so much about Ashton Johnty, and rightfully so. The true blue reality when it comes to the type of players that we're looking at in the college football world, we look at guys like Omar Hampton, who had Marion Hampton, who had 1,600 yards, Trey Stewart, R.J. Harvey, along with Cam Scatterbo, whom we're going to see in the college football playoff. But Dylan Sampson was right there ninth in the entire nation when it came to rushing yards. So when we look back and we think at this football team, we want to thank Iamaleave, but in reality, it's Dylan Sampson that makes this team go. When you look at the way this team operates with Josh Heupel's style, which is, like we all know, he likes to run that tempo, push it up, do what he does, make sure that everybody is trying to figure out what he's got going on, and really break your safeties out and get as many guys away from the line of scrimmage as he possibly can. And it works exceptionally well. You can't hate the player. All you can do is just hate the game. And the truth of the matter is Josh Heupel's one of those guys you really have to keep an eye on, because he is a guy that is going to continuously run the ball down your throat, and you don't even realize that's what he's doing. Whereas while you're trying to figure out what he's got going on, you still really have no clue as to what's going on, because what you're trying to do is you're worried about Iamaleave. So basically, he's smoke screening you. He's got you under the impression that, hey, bruh, they're going to throw it. They're going to throw it. Their passing game is average. I know what a lot of people... I know. They're average. They're a little bit better than average. Let me just put that out there. They're a little bit better than average. But the fact remains, Sampson's the guy that you have to worry about in this offense. And I think ultimately this, when we start looking at the matchups, this is going to be a game. This is going to be a team that if you get caught up in the flow of the game, when you think fast offense, you think they're going to throw it, or they're trying to get you off guard so they can throw it. Not saying that's not what they're doing, but for the most part, that's not what they're doing. They're basically, in a nutshell, trying to run the football and get you as off balance as they can. And Heupel's done a great job in many situations en route to the only two hiccups that they had were at Arkansas and at Georgia. And I'll tell you, Heupel will tell you right quick, this was a game that they gave to Arkansas. And I think everybody in the country would agree. I mean, like I said, you look at Iamaleave's numbers. The last two games were 257, 209. And then you got 292 against Kentucky. And then you got 314 in the opener against Chattanooga and 211 against NC State. So realistically, Tennessee doesn't scare you with they keep you honest with it. I think more like the bite is bigger than the bark with their offense of throwing it down the field. But having said that, when you start looking at where this team really gets you and they get you hard, it's going to be in the running game and misdirection. You have to stay disciplined with this team, because if you're not disciplined, Josh Heupel will exploit it. Whether it's the run game, reverse game, or the screen game. They don't do anything majorly complex in their offense. They don't. And I think Ohio State, this is not going to be the Indiana aspect of it where you just blitz. Tennessee has a great offensive line as well. Now, you would look at the Georgia game and you'd say not so much. Sampson still had 100 yards rushing. And Iamaleava had some runs of his own. Now, looking at what they've got in Ohio State, I will say this. Do I think if Iamaleava uses his legs, this is going to open things up? I truly believe this will definitely open it up. Hence why Indiana had such a rough time against Ohio State. You know, he wouldn't get out of the pocket. So let us look at what the Tennessee Volunteers bring. As you see, you got Dante Thornton Jr. with 647. As I said, Nico's over 2,500 yards passing on the year, so it's not overly impressive. However, you do have some guys that can scoot. You know, you got Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, and of course Dante Thornton. None of these guys have over 500 yards. These other guys do, but however, you do have Miles Kitselman, the tight end, who's got 4 red zone touchdowns. The 6'5", 256-yard senior tight end out of Kansas. This is a guy that can be a huge red zone threat for them when they get inside the red zone. This is a huge deal for these guys. They really like using their tight ends inside the red zone. They also have a kid named Ethan Davis, 6'5", 246 pounds, and another tight end that is very familiar to myself and many Notre Dame fans, and that would be Holden Stays, a guy who transferred out of South Bend, 6'4", 248, who was a huge deal over in South Bend. They had a monster 3-touchdown game last season. To me, this could be a huge asset to them, using the tight ends, putting them out there so they can run the football with those corners and those extra safeties in the box, if you will. It's going to be predicated on what Ohio State wants to do. But if you got tight ends out there, especially in the red zone, that's mismatch all day, especially if they decide to go with linebackers or safeties. But looking at, we've already met the offense. Now let's look at this defense. And one James Pierce Jr., the guy whom the NFL scouts are just drooling over. 6'5", 243. He has 7.5 sacks. Been relatively quiet for a guy that's on the NFL radar. Has 35 total tackles. Has 1 pass defense, then a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. Now, that's not to say this guy is a scrub. Now, don't go back saying I said James Pierce Jr. was a scrub. I didn't say that. They're just very minute numbers for a kid that you're expecting to be a huge, big-time NFL prospect. But I will tell you this. If Will Howard holds the ball, or any of these quarterbacks that Tennessee has to go against holds the football, it's going to be a lot of trouble, and it's going to be a long night. Probably one of the strongest features that this offense has is that this defense has the ability to keep guys off their linebackers. You got Arian Carter, who leads the team as a sophomore with 65 tackles. And see, this is the thing. When you got a guy, he has no sacks on the year, but he's got an interception, and he's very good at making tackles in the open space, along with Will Brooks, who's a defensive back. 54 tackles. He's got a sack and 3 interceptions. Jermod McCoy, he's got 39 tackles on the year, and he's got 4 interceptions. The 6', 193 sophomore out of White House, Texas, seems to have a knack for the football. And if Will Howard gets careless with the football, which he generally does not, he does on occasion force 1 or 2 balls when he gets panicky or he doesn't know where to go with the football. But that's just talking about Ohio State. Now, what I'm looking at more than anything else is trying to figure out how this Tennessee team can get past its 2 major opponents. Now, if you as a Tennessee fan want Mr. CeeLo, want the perfect bracket, if you're ready for the perfect bracket, first you got to get past Ohio State and Oregon. Those 2 games are locked in. Here's how Tennessee perfectly plays a game against Ohio State. You don't panic. You got a good enough defense to slow down Ohio State's run game, much like Indiana when they played Ohio State. This is a football team that Will Howard is a guy that is just trying to manage and not screw it up. Will Howard's not that dangerous of a thrower. However, if guys like Egbuka and freshman sensation Jeremiah Smith get into open space, then that's going to present some trouble. But as far as the secondary guys out there, I'm not really concerned about Ohio State's secondary. Not at all. I am worried about that pass rush that they have because they've got two guys in excess of 5 sacks. JT Tuimoloau, who has 6 sacks, and Cody Simon with 5 sacks. And Jack Sawyer's got 4.5. So you're looking at 3 guys that can get the passer. But the one thing I've noticed Ohio State's gotten out of is that they've gotten out of this, okay, we're going to just send 4 guys, which that's very efficient when you got quarterbacks that don't have alternate routes or they don't have alternate ways to get the football to other players. But Tennessee has so many outlets. They don't try to throw the ball into space. I mean, they don't try to throw the ball into trouble. They try to throw the ball where the numbers are. They try to get the numbers in their favor so that they can do what they want to do, which is speed up things and be able to make you tackle in space. When they can do that, they get their athletes in space. They get guys like Sampson in situations where they're one-on-one. You have to make the tackle, make a crisp, clean tackle, because Sampson's one of those guys, when he gets hit, he's going to fall forward, giving him anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 yards every time he gets tackled. Then we have to go and we have to look and ask ourselves, does Tennessee's defense have enough to hold up against Ohio State's running game? The answer to that question is a resounding yes. I thought they did a phenomenal job against Georgia. I just think I thought the problem that Tennessee had was they relied too much on their defense to keep stopping Georgia. You got to make a team like that one-dimensional. When you know you don't have the same amount of horses that they have, you got to make sure you get out in front. Okay? Same thing with Ohio State. You don't have the same horses here. You have to make Ohio State and Will Howard, you have to put this game on Will Howard's shoulders. So I'm going to say, in order for Tennessee to win this game, they've got to get ahead so that they can run their style. But, here's a but here. Heupel's got to run this style of offense up-tempo, up-tempo, up-tempo. Ohio State's going to want to slow it down because ultimately when Tennessee gets Ohio State in the fourth quarter, they want them tired. That's the ultimate goal of the Tennessee Volunteers. They want to... And it's not a bad idea if Heupel goes 3-3-3 and then go for it on 4th down, which is what I think they will need to do a couple of times in this game in order to beat Ohio State. Because let's keep it in perspective, you guys. They're going into the horseshoe. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold. You ain't going to see Iamaleava throwing the ball down the field like that. Maybe once or twice just to keep Ohio State guessing. But for the most part, I don't see it happening. I see a lot of Dylan Sampson, a lot of speed sweeps, a lot of screens. In order for Tennessee to win this game, Sampson's going to have to come up big. I think in this game he ends up doing that. And Heupel sticks with it, which allows Tennessee to move forward and go to the Rose Bowl to face off against a team that Ohio State would have loved to have gotten their hands on yet again. Tennessee versus Oregon. Now, this is a tale of 2 of the same type of offenses. The only difference is one has a more feared running back. The other has more feared speed players. To me, this is a game of whether or not Dylan Sampson can impose and that offensive line for Tennessee can impose their will on that much lighter Oregon defensive front. Then on the flip side, can Tennessee's great pass rush get pressure on Dylan Gabriel? To me, this game is going to be a back and forth. This is going to be one of those games where Tennessee is going to have to show they can keep up. And they're going to have to be patient. Oregon's one of those teams that they can be lulled to sleep. And we saw that in that Penn State game. They can be lulled to sleep and get to a point where they just... Not saying Penn State didn't earn their victory over them, but I'm just putting it out there. It just seemed as though they got lulled to sleep. And ultimately, Penn State made a run. And Tennessee likes to run the football. And I saw some things against Penn State that showed me that Oregon is vulnerable against the run. And I will say this, Oregon matches up speed-wise big time. I think Oregon would actually have the advantage speed-wise. So then again, the speed to the football is not a problem when it comes to Oregon. However, can those smaller linebackers and defensive backs for Oregon tackle in open space? And ultimately, if you're Josh Heupel, I've got to have, listen, I don't care if I'm down 21 points to this Oregon team. I got to keep feeding Dylan Sampson and figuring out ways to get him the football on the perimeter if I can't run it. Get him those screens. Figure out some way. Put him in the slot. Figure out some way to get him a bubble screen out there with those big tight ends you got. This would be a wonderful game for those 3 tight ends that they got to get on the field. And I think Heupel figures out some way to do it. And that allows them to, now this is the perfect, remember this is the perfect bracket, people. I believe they're going to have to use a lot of 12, 13 man personnel. They're going to have to get it to a point where tight ends are just all over the field. Make Oregon do something they're not comfortable with, which is tackle a lot of big guys in space. Or they have to get off blocks of big guys in space. I think Tennessee does that. And it allows them to move on. Now keep in mind, the first 2 matchups they couldn't help. But in the perfect scenario, the Tennessee Volunteers would want none other than the Clemson Tigers. Now, a lot of you will probably say, why not Arizona State? This is not a matchup that they want. Because Arizona is a pound. I'm not sure that Tennessee's defense is designed to go with that pound. Arizona State ain't finna give up on the run. With Scatterbo, they're not gonna give up on you. Scatterbo is a physical runner. He's okay with getting 1 here, 3 there, 1 here, maybe go for it on 4th down if it's 4th and 3. They're not afraid. They walk in here with house money. And it's going to be in Dallas. You can bet there's going to be, y'all might travel well, but this team's going to travel very well. It ain't a hop, skip, and a ride for them. I mean, it's not quite that. I mean, Athens, Atlanta is that far. But ultimately, when you face this team, I think there are 3 keys that they're going to have in order for Arizona State, for them to beat Arizona State. Now, they're not very difficult ones because, as many of you have seen, Arizona State's not heavily favored in this game. Everybody's thinking that this is a team that is just going to fall flat on its face. It's not going to get anything done. It's just going to be, whatever. But if Tennessee can get Sampson in space, if they can utilize the speed on the outside, and they can stop Scatterbo, this very well could be the Tennessee Volunteers moving on to the next round, which is the national championship game. And the reason why I feel like this Tennessee Volunteer team can do this is because they played some physical football teams that run the ball. However, to me, Scatterbo is one of the top 5 most physical running backs in the country. There's not a back in the SEC that runs with the type of reckless abandonment that he does consistently. I know what you're going to say, Brad. You're going to say that ETN kid. No, he can't stay on the field. And he don't get that many carries. Scatterbo is arguably should have went to New York. That kid is amazing. He is so much fun to watch. But in order for Tennessee, I think Tennessee's able to do that. They've been able to get Sampson in space and move on to the national championship. Now, in the perfect scenario / perfect bracket, the team that the Tennessee Volunteers would want to face off against in the national championship is the Indiana Hoosiers. And a lot of people, if you're Indiana Hoosier fans, you'll be offended. But the fact is, this game will be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And the reality of it is, what you want with Indiana versus Tennessee, Tennessee has the ability to get pressure with 4. And we saw in that Ohio State game, if you can get pressure on Curtis Rourke, Ohio State gave you the pressure. He didn't even throw over 100 yards, y'all. And this is why Curt Signett felt the way he felt. And this is why I say at the end of the day, Curt Signett couldn't feel any type of way. You know, when you look at this team, I will say what I said. They couldn't pick up the blitz. And I don't think if Tennessee gets in a position where they can't get pressure on Curt, they're going to back away. I don't think so. I think they're going to go right at him. I think they're going to put some heat to him because they realize One of the weaknesses on this Indiana team is their offensive line. And I'm going to tell you, Cignetti is a guy who is a very good animated type of a guy. He doesn't mince words. But the reality of it is, when you look at this Indiana offense versus this Tennessee offense, I look at the idea that Rourke is the better quarterback, but I'm not sold on their running game. And you better be able to balance the attack when it comes to the Volunteers, because that defensive line gets after you. And they get after you hard. I think ultimately the problem with Indiana is going to deal with is trying to tackle Sampson in space and those wide receivers. And this could be another very big game where Heupel puts those tight ends out there and puts maybe Dylan Sampson out there on the edge and says, hey, I'm going to get it to him. I'm going to see if those little guys out there can tackle him in space. I think they end up doing that. I think this is the game where Tennessee shows the future of things to come. And there you have it. Once again, you will see the Tennessee Volunteers raising the trophy in the perfect bracket, that is. If the bracket doesn't go like this, maybe with the hiccup of maybe playing, possibly, if they could draw maybe Boise State in the next round, in the semifinal round, in the national championship round. Maybe even drawing Texas. You never know. I mean, and as I said, the reality here is that the Volunteers have to rely on Dylan Sampson, and they have to get pressure on whatever quarterback that they're playing and make defenses tackle them in space. There's a possibility that I think Penn State could be a team that they could beat. So you could see add Penn State, maybe Boise State in the national championship game. That could be a game that they could win. But let me know what you guys think about Tennessee's perfect path to a national championship. Make sure you leave comments down below. Also, if you join the show, subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon so that every show that comes out, I ain't done with all these teams. I still got a couple more to go. Make sure that if you subscribe to the show, you put your name down in the comments below. Also, if you got another team that you want me to do off-season shows on, please let me know. Make sure you go to the Gridiron Gab Triple Option Facebook page as well as the Facebook group. Add yourself there and make sure you friend the show. Also, go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo so you can find out all the other shows and things that I'm also caught up in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.